Imagine, you just landed on Mars with your family. Your phones and other electronics don't work, so your family brought some disposable cameras with. You take some epic pics. You're on Mars. How could pic not be epic? Your family's the star of the show, and then, once you're done with your trip, you come back to Earth and get the film developed, only to find that all the pictures you took are really bright. Our experiment was exactly that, a test to see if film can survive space, specifically radiation, and to see if this is something you could take on a trip into space or to Mars. To start our experiment, our team took pictures of ourselves with disposable cameras. We then took the film from the disposable cameras and sent them in, one going up to space and one staying on Earth. Our hypothesis being that the radiation in space would lighten up the film because it is the same type of wave as light and has the same effects on film as light. The film came back and we got it developed. Then we had to wait a few weeks before our whole team could get together and look at the results. With the first few photos on the tape, it started to look like we had proven our hypothesis wrong. There was very little change in the color between them, lighter or darker, and it wasn't until we looked at the last photo that we could really see a clearer difference between the control film and the flight film. The last photo seemed to have been discolored in both canisters, so we decided that radiation didn't cause that, and that wasn't what we were looking for anyway. Besides the discoloration, the flight film, which went up to space, was lightened enough where you didn't have to look too hard to see the difference between the two photos. This actually makes a lot of sense, since as the film winds up in the canister, that photo would have been on the outside of the roll and had the most exposure to radiation. This clearly showed that, although not as much as we anticipated, radiation does have an effect on film. We would venture to say, though, that because of the principle behind our findings is true, radiation does lighten the film, longer exposure to radiation would make it brighter. This is a great starting place for a future experiment on long periods of exposure to radiation. In our experiment, we mostly took photos outside, and this made it slightly more difficult to see the difference in the film. If we were to do this again, we would definitely take multiple shots with varying amounts of light. So, would your disposable camera work on Mars? Well, probably not too well. The developed photo would end up being fairly bright after a trip to Mars and the long exposure to radiation that such a trip would have. Over the past couple of years, our squadron has had an increase in flight training. So with the $5,000 prize money, we would first pursue getting a flight simulator, which could then be used for flight training and recruiting events. Our cadet aerospace officer has an interest in drones. He wants to share it with the rest of the cadets. So after the simulator, we would put money into a drone program. Then, when those things are taken care of, the rest of the funds would go to other supplies for the squadron.